Chapter 1 of Oscar Wilde, The Story of an Unhappy Friendship, by Robert Sherard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Oscar Wilde, The Story of an Unhappy Friendship, by Robert Sherard. Chapter 1. I was not by him in the poor room of the poor inn where he died. I had not the consolation of following to the nameless grave the lonely hearse which had no flowers on its pall. But, as many hundreds of miles away, I read of his solitary death, and heard of the supreme abandonment of him by those to whom also he had always been good, I determined to say all the things that I knew of him, to tell people what he really was, so that my story might help a little to a better understanding of a man of rare heart and rarer genius. In years to come, people reading his works will want to know more about him than the evil tradition which his name will evoke, and the student of literature, amazed at the splendour of his art, may be glad that at least one of those who were his friends thought fit to put on record a story which goes to prove the eternal truths that no man who is a great artist can be a bad man at heart, and that an innate love of beauty will always keep alive in the mysterious recesses of the soul a hatred for what is base, a striving for what is noble. Of the aberration which brought this fine life to shipwreck so pitiful, I have nothing to say. I leave to the physiologists to classify it, to the psychologists to wrangle with the makers of laws over the degree of responsibility which it involves. It is a question altogether in the domains of pathology, and my task is with the artist and the friend alone. I can disregard, in writing of him, the cruel and devilish madness which, as people said and to their satisfaction proved, at times actuated him, with all the greater ease, that during the 16 years of our friendship, by not one word of his, by not one gesture, by not the fleeting shadow of one evil thought, did it betray itself to me in the radiant and splendid gentleman that he was. I can say now what, in a letter to Sir Edward Clarke at the time of his trial, I offered to say in the court of the Old Bailey, that during 20 years of communion with the world, of commerce, by profession and standing, with men and women in every rank of life, in many parts and places, I never met a man more entirely pure in conversation, nor one more disdainful of vice in its vulgarity and uncomeliness. Never there came the faintest suggestion of an unclean thought from those eloquent and inspiring lips. No coarse word ever soiled them, and if behind the wonderful eyes a demon was indeed crouching, madness here too allied itself with such supreme cunning of dissimulation, that, for me, till the very end, he remained the beau ideal of a gentleman in all that that word implies of lofty and serene morality. Men together, after wine, the world over, hasten with delight in conversation to a certain class of pleasantry. The topic is the same over the Turkish cigarette and the white curaçoa as over the clay pipe and the pint of beer, if the language differ. In Oscar Wilde's presence it was understood amongst his friends that who should so jest would commit an unpardonable offence. It was his supreme delicacy of tongue and manner that won him amongst women such devoted friendships. It is the misfortune of the writer that it is not possible to bring evidence of these many friendships. But the fact remains that his memory will live long in many a gentle breast, as that of a man most chivalrous, whose gallantry inspired him with that profound respect which is, to all women, their most grateful tribute. A great French actress once said to me, speaking of him, "What attracted me to Oscar Wilde was that he showed me from the very first that his many kindnesses were not rendered to me for the sake of establishing a claim on my favour, as is the case with nearly every man who comes near us. I found a comrade in him, not a suitor, and a deep and real friendship was possible. It is rarely so between a woman and a man." These words recurred to me years later when, in a smoking room in a country mansion, I heard a certain noble person who had discovered a copy of Wilde's first book of poems on our host's shelves cry out in horror and ask to be allowed to throw it into the fire. Ah!
Sample complete. Ready to continue?